iHeartRadio Broadway, driven by Mercedes-Benz. The best or nothing.
Welcome to another episode of Growing Up Broadway, the world's first podcast for theater makers who are young or young at heart.
Today's show features film, television, and Broadway star Erich Bergen.
So help me, Sondheim.
So help me, Sondheim.
Growing up, yeah, we're growing up. Yeah, we're growing up Broadway.
Welcome to Growing Up Broadway. I'm your co-host, Timothy Allen McDonald.
I'm your other co-host, S.J. Arniger.
So we took a couple of weeks away from this video cast because you and I were both producing events for the Thespian Festival, the International Thespian Online Virtual Festival Extravaganza.
Yep.
You took the late night shift, so tell everyone what was it that you were doing?
So I was basically the Samantha Bee of the Virtual Thespian Festival this year. They asked me to be their late night talk show host, which was weird in the first place. I partnered with Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. They were kind of like my Ed McMahon sidekick throughout the whole entire thing. But we interviewed some great people, Shireen Pimentel, Taylor Amon Jones. We got some inside scoop on Devil Wears Prada. Ariel Jacobs, we talked all things between the lines. I think she now thinks that I'm a total fan super stalker of your show, and I may have scared her a little bit, so you may have to deal with that a little bit. Her brother made a surprise appearance, so it was fun. I mean, the students really loved it. We interviewed some teachers too, so it was a good time.
So I did an event with Pasek and Paul, and we opened with Play on Patrick, who is the extraordinary young man who introduced Barack Obama on the online event that they did several weeks back at the beginning of Black Lives Matter. Well, not the beginning, but the resurgence and when all of that went down.
Right.
Still going down. He recited one of his poems that was just so. This line has stuck with me since then. And it's about the line of like stealing their history, stealing Black history, and turning plantation into wedding venues. It's just such a vivid image.
Right.
It just keeps circling back in my head. And I love that Justin and Benj tried to convince him to abandon criminal justice to write musicals.
Either or.
I still think he could do both.
We can probably do both.
Yes.
He's so talented, so amazingly talented.
Smart, kind, sweet. People, you should follow him. He's on Twitter. It's PLAYON, PLAYON, Patrick, just like Patrick. And he's going to do remarkable things, and you heard it here at least second, hopefully not first.
So moving from that, we're now entering phase 2 for New York City. Anything different in your life now that we're in phase 2?
I did go to our second favorite watering hole, but now our first, only because Perdition, rest in peace.
R.I.P.
But I went to Ardesia on the Monday when we opened up, and I met my buddy Nick Pramick, and we sat outside and had food served to us that was not cooked by myself or my husband. And we enjoy way too much rosé. Kids, if you're listening, moderation is key, except when it's not. How about you?
The only real difference is I finally got my hair done. I was like, I can't wait any further. I'm technically supposed to be in quarantine for 14 days before I go away for vacation with mutual friends of ours. So I snuck out and got my hair done, and I feel like a normal human being.
Yeah, I've just made the commitment that until the pandemic is declared done, I'm growing my hair. So there could be some Rip Van Winkle in my life. I don't know. But I'm just going to keep it growing and growing, and then I'll cut it when the pandemic's over.
So I also hear there's some big 1-0 news.
Oh my gosh, yes. So this young man in Australia who's 12 years old, his name is Oliver, goes by Ollie. He is a professional performer like Luca and some of the other young people we know. And he was supposed to, I think, go into Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the musical, in Australia, professionally. and it got, shut down and all that. He was so bummed that he purchased the online edition of the Big 1-0 with money from his own pocket, and then produced the whole show by bringing together a director, choreographer, MDs, cast a mix of kids and adults, put the whole thing up, filmed it, and it is extraordinary.
Can we have him on the show?
Oh my God, yes, let's do that.
Okay, we'll make that happen.
I can translate Australian for you.
Good to know. I think we should get to our guest.
We should, let's do it.
I'm really excited about today's guest, Erich Bergen. You've known him for a while.
A year or two.
So let's get him out here. He's been on films such as Jersey Boys. He was on the television show, which happened to be one of my ultimate favorite TV shows, Madam Secretary. He was in Waitress on Broadway. So please welcome to Growin' Up Broadway, Erich Bergen.
I pressed the wrong button. Hi. I was trying to nail down the timing of getting on the thing, and
we're not that high tech here. It's fine.
Now I'm sweating. And I need 5.
Do you want to come back in? We'll do it.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm here. It's fine. It's all good. Hi.
So first question, how are you doing with all of the sequestering and quarantine and all that?
I'm okay. Thankfully, everyone, mostly everyone I know is healthy and doing well through all of this insanity. My career kind of took this weird turn where all of a sudden I ended up being parked at my computer chair for the past, since March 16th or so, or 17th. I had some crazy idea to do this online benefit with Rosie O'Donnell, and it turned into it's been a lot. It's been nonstop event producing. And I'm running out of underwear. My laundry hasn't been done in weeks. It's really a special situation here. But yeah, it's been a wild time that I've tried to make the best out of it. But there are moments where you go, what is this? So, I ran out of coffee. I had to Postmates coffee this morning. That was a new low for me. But that's where I am now. I poured it into a mug, so it felt like it was homemade, but
fair, yeah. Which is, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Even it was a delivery of the coffee cake and everything.
I had the early panic of running out of coffee in the house, like when everything was shut down and Starbucks closed, but we're okay now. Hey, since you brought up the Rosie thing, how did that come about? Because personally, I found that so inspirational. And then I pinged you through our buddy Rob and was like, what platform did we've been using StreamYard and broadcasting now every week to all of our audiences. So how did that come about?
Very simple. I was sitting in my house watching the 5 o'clock news when they announced, came on TV that they were announcing the closure of Broadway. At that point, it was just for 1 month. And I started to see all my friends on social media talking about it. And something just hit me instantly that the Actors Fund was going to be inundated with requests. And I just thought, my God, this could deplete the Actors Fund if we don't, kind of put attention to that. Because I get very, I only made my Broadway debut 2 years ago, but I've always felt like a Broadway kid. I've always been a theater kid and born and raised here in New York. And Broadway is it means a lot to me. I'm very proud is the wrong word, but I feel an attachment to it. I defend it when it doesn't even need defending. I feel that it's, so integral to the heartbeat of New York City, to the economy of New York City. And I think a lot of times it gets looked at as just this, like fun way to spend a lot of money, but it's so important to everything in the city. So I get very passionate about it. And so I thought we have to do something. And I knew Rosie a little bit, and we follow each other on Twitter. We've met a few times, and I sent her this text. I said, this is so crazy, but the Rosie O'Donnell show was so important to me growing up in terms of seeing theater and seeing performers on television. And that was for someone who was already in New York. It's obviously known that it had a huge impact on the world or on the country in terms of Broadway and Broadway shows and Broadway talent, especially after 9/11. And I just thought it would be great when we're all feeling this weird way right now. We need a little bit of comfort food. It would be great to have someone like Rosie come back and do her thing. I said, I sent her a Twitter DM. I said, if I can put this together, will you do it? She said, yeah, if you put it together, I'll do it. I said, okay, great. I had no clue how to actually do it. It was just one of those things where I'll say it and then maybe it'll happen. And that's what happened. I called Laurie McCreary, who was the producer of Madam Secretary. Laurie McCreary and her producing partner, who happens to be the actor Morgan Freeman, as opposed to the plumber Morgan Freeman, but Morgan and Laurie have this production company, Revelations Entertainment. They're the producers of Madam Secretary, and Laurie has a big background in the tech world. That's where she came from, and I thought she would know something about how to do this, and she didn't have the answer instantly as to what technology to use, but she did know to connect us with the YouTube people and their social impact team. And she was looped in with them. And so she made that happen. And then in talking to YouTube, they said, you should have it's important what channel you're on. So I called my friend, Paul Wontorek, who's the editor-in-chief of Broadway.com. And he was kind of struggling with what happens to Broadway.com right now, because their main source of revenue is ticket sales and advertising for Broadway shows. So at that point, he wasn't even worried about the money. It was just, what is Broadway.com right now? And he took a chance, and thank God he did. And he was so smart and so brilliant in how to put it together. And he taught himself StreamYard in a minute. And we just kind of figured it out, and we just kind of did it. And I brought on Craig Burns from Telsey Casting, who did all of the outreach to talent. And we kind of made it happen just out of sheer everyone wanting to do this. I mean, everyone said yes. Yeah. To the point where we realized the day of the show, oh, this is a 2-day show. We were worried about the length. But we got through it. It was 3 hours, 3.5. It was something crazy. But we sat there. I sat right here at this computer and did it. And it was really a thrill. And the next morning, my life changed. The next morning, I had 10 phone calls from the Oscars, the Colbert Show, the UNICEF, all these different places wanting to figure out how I did it. Many of the phone calls were, "Can I pick your brain?" which is now my new least favorite phrase. But then other people were like, "I'll pay you, just do it for us." And I was like, this isn't what I do. Well, as it turns out, this is now what I do. But I love it. I've brought on a great team of editors and writers, and we've been putting together these virtual events, and they've been, I think I'm on event number 15 now or something like this. And I'm already kind of booked solid through the fall. It's been a wild, crazy, I've worked with every big name talent you could think of, from Cher to Robert De Niro I directed Robert De Niro in a scene over Zoom. That's not how I thought my spring was going to go a few months ago. That was not something I saw in my life. I didn't think, what I'd like to do one day is direct Robert De Niro in a Zoom call. That was never on the list of things. So it's been a thrill. And right now I'm doing this project with Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and John Legend, and that's been a real thrill. And it's just been great. It's just been a wild. It's been wild. I hope somebody one day hires me as an actor again, but for the time being, I'm doing this.
Well, it's amazing how much you have to pivot during this whole entire time period. Tim and I know that so well right now.
Sure.
With iHeartRadio Broadway, it's a radio station. I produce podcasts and video, sure, but doing podcasts in video form and doing live events and live streaming and partnering with people. So it's been a learning process for all of us, hardcore, but I also wonder when the Zoom fatigue is going to hit, and are we going to hit like that wall where nobody wants to do it anymore? And that's my main worry, is when do people not want to look each other on a screen anymore?
Well, I think Zoom fatigue has hit. I think we're already there. I think it's more about a creative way to use it. A lot of the organizations and charities and companies that have been reaching out to me are the groups that have big charity galas in the fall, or, you know, they have the whatever ball or the whatever. And a lot of these events are really dinners. You know, they're networking dinners. They, you know, I'll get on the phone with some of these people and I'll say, well, what is the event in person? And they say, well, it starts with the press line, the press room. Then there's a cocktail hour, and then it goes into some other little, like other little kind of a cocktail hour thing. Then it goes to dinner, and people have their appetizers and their dinner. And then there's more cocktails, and then there's dessert, and then there's the post-show reception that's like a dance thing. I was like, great. Where in that are we going to, like, what part of that are we converting to Zoom? Is it the dinner? Should we cook, you know, our lean cuisine and bring it to the Zoom thing and just eat in front of each other on Zoom? I don't really get. So it's been interesting having to think of the creative way to pivot what the event is. And I think because of my theater training, and not just being on stage, but just going to a lot of events as both talent or just invited or just being in the audience of certain things, I know what I enjoy. And I also know the feeling from the stage. And so I'm able to lend these groups, I hesitate to say my expertise, but I can at least express my experience, and try to convert it into something that is a bit more of a show. Mm-hmm. Because I think anyone who's trying to recreate something they already do in person and just do it virtually, I think is completely the wrong way to go about this. You have to, it's a page one rewrite on what the event is. And that's very, very hard for a lot of institutionalized events and people. It's very hard for them to think that way.
Yeah.
Well, Erich, you are a theater kid. That's who you are. That's how we know.
You knew me when I was a literal kid.
Yes, when you were literally a Broadway wannabe, just obsessed with Broadway, all things Broadway and musicals.
Yes.
Because I hired you or cast you to perform the role of Madame Thénardier. No, Monsieur Thénardier.
Madame Thénardier is my drag name, but I played Thénardier.
You did. And you were a substitute, you were a replacement, because the young man who was supposed to do it, his voice didn't change, and that was Adam Chandler Barat.
But my understanding was his voice was changing at the moment, wasn't it? It was something like that.
It was literally just like, one day he was like, "Hi, I'm Adam." And
right.
Then he was like, "Hi, I'm Adam."
Right. I know. I felt bad about that for years until I saw him in Peter and the Starcatcher, and he was just so brilliant. I thought, he's fine.
It all turned out
fine.
We have a clip of you singing a little Monsieur Thénardier. Hey, Magic Dan, would you play that, please, so we could just super embarrass Erich?
Oh, I hear the goose is cooked. I hear the fat is fried, and nothing's overlooked till I'm satisfied. Oh!
Food beyond compare.
Food beyond belief. Mix it in a mincer and pretend it's beef.
You're right. I was playing Madame Thénardier. That's actually, I think that was my choice. I didn't even realize it until now.
Do you remember anything from that recording session, or?
Yeah, we recorded it at Bennett. I think it was Tony Bennett's studios.
We did.
In New Jersey, which was this gorgeous studio. And it was something where it was the first time I had ever been in isolation booths. And because I was I was a kid, before I was a theater kid, I was obsessed with pop music. And so I remember one of my early party tricks. And when I say party tricks, it was my parents' dinner parties where I was the kid at the party. I would imitate all the voices on We Are the World. which was in a recording studio. So I was always obsessed with the whole recording studio thing. That was like instead of being obsessed with like X-Men or sports, I was obsessed with We Are the World. Nothing's changed. And that was my first time in an isolation booth. And I just remember that being really impactful on me because it was such a beautiful studio. And I remember having that experience of, I'm a big learn as I go guy. I mean, obviously with the Rosie thing, and just I'm always like, say you can do it and then figure it out as you go along. And I remember many things clicking in as I was recording that, like, oh, you don't have to sing as loud, don't have to belt. I kind of learned vocal production on the fly from the artist's standpoint. And I also remember thinking, I think there were some early takes where I was just singing it, like I was just trying to focus on the singing, and it was you or someone who said, no, really, get the character stuff in there. And I remember then doing a full performance of the song, and clearly that is a performed piece. That is, I'm so glad that still goes out to kids of all ages when they rent Les Mis Junior from MTI.
Yeah, so it's and it's, thousands and thousands of kids are probably singing it exactly the way that you did all over the world.
I'll be speaking to my lawyer about that, but other than that, that's wonderful.
So moving away from Les Mis School Edition.
Oh, well, that should really be the whole, we should just talk about that the whole time.
No. You want to talk about that the whole time?
No, it's fine. Honestly, that's all I remember from it. But I remember it being, I just remember it being great. I mean, I had a lot of experiences with youth theater programs in the New York area. I was a part of a few of them, and that one was just so great, and I love that it still exists. Yeah.
So when I did your intro, I mentioned that you were a film star as well. You did Jersey Boys.
Yeah.
So for the kids listening, what was it like being directed by Clint Eastwood?
Unbelievable. I mean, he's one of the smartest, he's one of the most kind people I've ever met, but he's so smart about film. And what was different for the Jersey Boys film was that we had all come, because the majority of the cast were people who had done the show. Mm-hmm. And he is a director that hates rehearsal. And if there's anything about theater people that we like, or I should say that we're used to, it's the rehearsal process. That's kind of where we figure out everything. Like, what's the actor's nightmare? Going out on stage and without knowing your lines, or well, those two things were like, I was like, wait, we're not going to rehearse. And he was like, you need rehearsal? I mean, it was he really does like to capture the raw moments that happen when you're not rehearsed. Mm-hmm. That's why you normally only get 2 takes with a Clint Eastwood scene. So there were times where it was difficult to figure out, and we had to, those of us who were in the show had to kind of rest on our muscle memory a little bit. But what I also thought was great was that it kicked into gear your natural instinct for certain scenes, and I think he got some great stuff out of it. There was also Vincent Piazza, who played Tommy DeVito, was the one person who had not done the show on stage. And so he came to it from the film and TV world, mm-hmm. where he really was just like screwing with each other and having fun and improvising things. And I remember the first couple of days, we're like, I don't have a line here, I can't say anything, and then you kind of freed up and you got used to it. But Clint was so great, and the whole experience was kind of surreal. I mean, I had done the show on tour, and I had done the show in Las Vegas, and I always think the reference I always have is, on stage there was a scene that takes place in a bowling alley, and that's referenced on stage by a sign that comes down that says the bowling alley, and there's 2 girls in the back of the stage just throwing bowling balls, off stage. That's all it is visually that represents a bowling alley. And then all of a sudden during the movie, we were in an actual bowling alley. And there were those moments where it was like, you felt like you were in some virtual reality Jersey Boys ride at Universal Studios or something. So it was wild. It was really wild. There are, so many moments of making that film that were life-changing. Mike Doyle, who played Bob Crew in the film, who had a lot of experience in TV and film. I was sitting with him one day on a golf cart. We were going from one set to another, and on the Warner Brothers lot. And I said to him, like, oh my gosh, I said, well, you have experience in this, how does this stand up with your other experiences? And he said, oh, it's not going to get better for this. It's not going to get better than this for you. You've peaked. And he was kind of right. I mean, that experience of like being on, making a big budget Clint Eastwood Hollywood musical on the Warner Brothers lot with my parking spot under the Warner Brothers water tower. And we filmed on the same soundstage as 42nd Street. Crazy experiences like that I tried really, really hard to kind of take them in day by day, because those things can just fly by, and they did fly by, but thankfully I do have a lot of incredible experiences. So, and some of the greatest friends that have come from it. So it was really, really a thrill.
We know that you started as a theater kid, and that's your heart and your soul. We heard a little taste of Erich as a 17-year-old making big, bold choices, right? So what is your difference from going from a stage, film, big screen to television? Because, you were on Madam Secretary for some time. What's the pivot on that?
The biggest differences between all the different mediums are catering and salary. Everything else is, I always feel is the same. I've always kind of believed that. I mean, you can obviously, there's technique that you figure out, and maybe you pick up some tips and you steal from some of the best. But I don't know that they're any different in terms of what you do. I think there's a natural inclination. If you are in the moment and you are present and you are standing on a Broadway stage, you know that you have to get your message, your story to the back of the house, and somehow do it in a way that doesn't feel like you're screaming to the front 3 rows, especially at the prices they've paid. How do you do that? What is that weird? So my feeling is always, it's if you're in the moment and you have at least studied enough basic technique, it can come simply from breathing and where you make noise from, and just your physical presence on the stage. I've rested on that. In that same way, if you are present and in the moment, if you are on a television set and there is a camera right here, that you don't have to, go into Broadway thing, because it's all about communication. So right now I'm talking to you, but you guys are, squares on my computer here. And I'm aware enough that me talking the way I'm talking communicates to you via microphones and all those things. But I know that there's a balcony outside my window right here to the other apartment next to me. And I know that if I just talked a little bit louder, but still communicated in the same way, I could get to those people. So it's more technique based. I don't think that you really change what it is that you're doing, or that there's different acting styles, or, I mean, there is. If you're doing Moliere, that's just, if you're doing a Shakespeare play, that's a different thing. Musical comedy, there's all those different styles. But the truth is the truth is the truth. And I think it just comes from making sure you've done enough homework so that when you're thrown into any new position, you don't have to think, oh, right, let me turn on my whatever thing. It's a natural thing that comes out.
I think the thing I loved about Madam Secretary, and I was a diehard, I watched from beginning to literally the end of Madam Secretary, no lie. It was one of my favorite shows because you had a strong female character that wasn't revolved around a love story. And I loved the show so much. But I think the thing I adored most about the show, it was filled with Broadway actors. And
Yeah.
I mean, shot in New York City helps, but it was just amazing to see one Broadway actor after another come on the show, whether it was a main character or a recurring or a guest spot. And that's what I truly, truly loved about the show.
Well, that's because of and that, by the way, that's also what I loved about the show. I mean, I got to work with some of my true heroes, not just on a regular, in the series regulars, but also in some of our day player guest stars and things like that. That's really because of two reasons. One, like you mentioned, we filmed here in New York, so people could make their curtain time, including me when I did Waitress on Broadway as I was filming the show all day long. But it was also because of our casting director, Mark Sachs. And Mark Sachs has been in the business forever, and he's a human Rolodex. I don't know if your listeners know what a Rolodex is, but he's a human encyclopedia of actors, especially those from the theater, and he's always been brilliant at that. And Mark discovered me when I was about 15 years old at Stage Door Manor, the theater camp that I went to growing up. And Mark had worked there, and I think he'd been a camper there. One of them, but he had a long history with Stage Door, and he comes up every summer to look for new talent and look for new kids and start to get them into the system, as it were. And we started being aware of each other when I was about 15 years old. Mark's very best friend and my mentor, who unfortunately passed a few years ago, Michael Larson, who was the creative head of Stage Door Manor for many years. Made sure to tell Mark, look out for this guy. And he did. And then he gave me my first TV show. It took, I think it was like, 13 years later or something like that, but he got me my own show. So, yeah.
I tell you what, I literally was like ride or die with Madam Secretary. I loved that show so much, and I was so
I'm so glad.
Close. Truly, like, I'm not a big TV person, but that show in particular, I loved.
We loved it. We loved every second of making it. And I have to tell you, it's one of those things you think about. I'm always still amazed. That show was on for 6 years. We had 6 seasons. And I remember the night that we only ended the show and we stopped filming in November.
Mm-hmm.
That day that we stopped, in the blink of an eye, it felt, when they yelled, "That's a wrap," for the last time, I could cry just thinking about it. But it was like in the blink of an eye. And in that instant, I remembered flying to New York to start filming the pilot. And it was like, it was all coming back to me, the things I was remembering. And it was like, boom, gone, done in a second. So it was crazy to think of it as being over. But what's been so great is the show, it always comes on to Netflix about like 5 or 6 months after it wrapped on CBS. So we get this whole second wave of people viewing it and discovering it. And I've been getting a lot of social media comments about it because of people in quarantine. They're watching anything and everything, and people who would never tune into something like Madam Secretary. It's like, fine, what's this? They get it on Netflix, and then it's a week later, they haven't showered and they're still watching season 5 and, getting the DMs from fans. So it's been really kind of a thrill to have people just keep discovering it.
So you already mentioned Stage Door Manor. Stage Door Manor, for those that don't know, it's been a summer program, or really year-long program, where it's trained a lot of pretty well-known actors, Natalie Portman, Robert Downey Jr., Mandy Moore. But now you all are, and now you all have announced this brand new virtual program. Can you tell us a little bit about it? So
Stage Door Manor was my home, like you said, for 7 years. And I was there with amazing people, like you said. I was there with Natalie Portman and Mandy Moore. Mandy and I were in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat together. I don't like to brag, but I will. She was Reuben, and I was the Pharaoh. Amazing people. Sebastian Stan, Skylar Aston, just an incredible group of people that went on to not only be on stage, but there's a bit of a stage door mafia out there of casting directors and producers and writers, and it has this mystique over it. But it is my home away from home, and I got together with 2 of my very best friends. And that's the other thing. Stage Door is still my that's my circle of friends that we, you know, talk. I mean, as I'm sitting here doing this interview, I have 65 text messages on my Stage Door text chain right now. And we've only been talking for a little bit. It's all day long. This is my family, and it's been my family since I was 10 years old. It's been the same people in my life since we were 10. So I'm very, 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 very lucky. And we got together, two of us, Dana Steingold, who's a brilliant actress in Beetlejuice, and Jeremy Liner, who is a talent agent here. The three of us got together and created this. We knew that Stage Door closing for the summer, what that would have felt like to us, and how we waited all year to get out of high school or wherever we were and get to Stage Door, you know, because it was the place where we could feel like ourselves. And we thought, the kids can't not have this. And Stage Door was already in the works doing a virtual camp for their current kids. But we thought, okay, what if we actually take Stage Door to the next level? And what if we take what we learned while we were there and made it available to everyone, the entire world? And that's what we've done. So we've launched something called Playhouse by Stage Door Manor, which is an online learning portal for workshops and masterclasses and Q&As and other types of events that we're putting together with your favorite performers from Broadway. I mean, we have Kelly O'Hara and Eva Noble-Zeta and Casey Levy and Corey Cott, Michael James Scott. I mean, some incredible people. Javier Munoz from Hamilton. I mean, an amazing group of people that we put it on sale just the other day, and already the tickets are flying out the virtual door, as it were, which is a thrill. I mean, for us, it's, you know, we had this idea and putting together something, going back to what we were all talking before about pivoting, you know, it's using art to take an idea and further it. It worked in this particular case. But I'm just so thrilled that we get to be a part of. We always used to joke, you know, do you think at the end of the day, you know, we're going to end up working for Stage Door Manor? Like at the end of it, are we just going to end up working at Stage Door Manor as camp counselors? We used to joke about that. Guess what? It happened. We now work for Stage Door Manor. It's really a thrill to be a part of this kind of future, and who knows what it can be, right? You know, we were all talking before about what phase we're in here in the city, and different phases all across the country and the world. Who knows that this just might be a temporary thing, or who knows, this might be a great way to reach people who don't always get or have the access to something like Stage Door, whether it be due to location and distance or due to money. And one of the things that we're really focused on with Playhouse is access and a focus on diversity of both teaching artists and students. Because there's no reason, you know, in the conversations that so much of the art world is having right now about diversity, if you really start to pull back the layer, the issue always comes down to money. Because, you know, and I don't mean to speak out of turn here, but, you know, getting into a good musical theater school, which is kind of the funnel into professional theater, you have to have a lot of money to go to these schools. And there's not a lot of scholarships and things like that. And also, there shouldn't just be, no one should feel like the scholarship kid, right? There shouldn't be shame in this. This should be something that is, art shouldn't cost that money. It shouldn't, to make art shouldn't cost that. So we've built a business in a way that if you can afford to pay the prices that we're charging, which are reasonable to begin with, pay it, because what you're also paying for are the people who can't.
Right.
But we have to even out that system. And the silver lining here is that something like Zoom or any type of virtual platform actually gives us the ability to do that in a way that you can't in the physical world. So we're really thrilled about some of the things that we're able to do with this.
So if there's a kid watching this and is like, oh my gosh, I get to go to Stage Door virtually, where do they go? How do they sign up?
It's Playhouse by SDM, the initials for Stage Door Manor, playhousebysdm.com. That's also our Twitter and Instagram. And I'm told we have a TikTok. I don't even know how to use that. I'm not even quite sure what TikTok is. I just know that I am old now. I have a Xerox here somewhere. Yeah, Playhouse by SDM, and it's really exciting. I mean, it's really fun. There's different levels, right? You know, if you want to come in and just kind of have fun and hang out with some Broadway talent that you love, you can do that. But if you're also serious about a career in the arts, this is a great way to connect with people that have been in your shoes and can help you get to your best self. And I was really hesitant about, can you really do this over Zoom? You know, about not being in the room, can you really do this? And as it turns out, you can. I was actually shown that you can. And I think a lot of younger people are already used to this type of world anyway. So I've been pleasantly surprised. And the talent that we're getting to say yes to this is really, really exciting.
I mean, just the sheer fact that you've put this together for students and for kids across really the world is a testament again to our industry just going, what can we do? How can we help? How can we pave it forward for those that are at a disadvantage or those that are sitting in their homes with nothing to do with their creative outlet? So just congratulations. It's an amazing program.
Thank you. I think that what the Black Lives Matter movement did was not just for people of color, but it turned anyone who was privileged, it made all of us, or hopefully it made those of us who were willing to listen, it made us go, well, who else is not getting the shot that they deserve here? It made us all look at all sorts of different inequalities, which was so beneficial because these businesses stepping up, especially those in the arts, to fix this problem, obviously was needed. But it's been kind of wonderful because it's made us kind of really look at layers of problems that we're not even near, the bottom of it. But we can start by saying, we're now going out to people. It's not about scholarships and things like that. It's like, just if you need help and you want a career in the arts, come to us. We'll figure it out. There shouldn't be the people that can afford to pay it. We're covered. We'll figure it out. But we're reaching out directly to these programs and saying, what kids do you know that deserve this? What kids do you know that deserve, so we're working very hard at that part of it.
So one more time for people to find the website. What is it again?
PlayHouseBySDM.com.
Amazing. All right. So each week we ask our guests to take our rapid fire musical theater quiz. So Tim and I are going to ask you a bunch of questions, random questions. Whatever comes to the top of your head first is the answer.
Okay.
Can't believe I'm about to say this, but you could potentially win a brand new Mercedes Matchbox car that are in pre-development. All right.
I just found my memories. Yes. Okay. I'm ready. I'm getting my fidget spinner to help because now I'm stressed out. So I'm ready for you whenever you feel.
Here you go. On your mark. Get set. Go.
What's your favorite musical of all time?
West Side Story.
Funniest or most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you live on stage?
When I was doing Waitress in Act 2, I had to do this dance with a pie. And as I was doing the dance and did that, I threw the pie into the audience. And Shonda Rhimes was in the audience. And when she came backstage after the show, she said, "Did you mean to do that?" And now I'm not on any Shonda Rhimes show.
If you could play any role, regardless of type, gender, age, whatever, which would you choose?
Seymour Little Shop.
Who do you want to be when you grow up?
Taya Leone.
What musical best reflects your mood today?
Oh, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown.
Oh, if you could see any musical live in a theater with a packed audience, it was safe, all of that, which would you choose?
Dreamgirls.
Mm.
All right, this one's really not fair. Sondheim, Weber, or Bareilles?
Oh my gosh, that's not fair. That's not fair. One of them employed me. That's not fair.
I cannot rate this question. I'm just gonna put that out there.
I will say that Sarah Bareilles' music goes after my heart way more than anyone else. I mean, that scored a waitress. I would be on stage and have to control myself from weeping uncontrollably. Sondheim is Stage Door and Michael Larson to me. So there's a different thing going on there. And Andrew Lloyd Webber, I have come to love as I've gotten older, because when I was a kid, Phantom was like, I was a theater kid, so I cared about like Jason Robert Brown and, like the nerdy theaters. I knew the cut songs from Company, but as I've grown older, I've learned to love Andrew Lloyd Webber's work. So I have different phases of all three, but Sarah Bareilles, I can put on at any time. I mean, that's just brilliant songwriting.
I always said, even before she started writing musical theater and she was an indie artist, her songs lend itself with storytelling to musical theater. So hard.
Absolutely.
Well, congratulations. You did win an
That was it? That wasn't hard.
No.
I thought it was going to be like trivia, like what was the name of the, I thought it was going to be like a quiz. That was okay. That was fine.
No, we're not that mean.
All right. It's not
Also,
trivia night.
As we've been doing this, I was like, this is really interesting because, 20 billion years ago, we were in a recording studio. I'm in Washington Heights, so like it's directly across from me. I can see it. And, I was directing and coaching you and all of this, to do this. And then flash forward, like I watched that Rosie thing and not that things makes it sound like it's a thing, but like that incredible event. And it's what motivated me to get off my booty, get off the couch, stop feeling sorry for myself, and figure out how I could do that same thing with all of our kids who are out there, not even knowing at the time that it was one of our kids who had done all that. So there's like this, I don't know.
Well, then you take it over. I need a break. So if you can, please, I'll hand you my logins for everything. You can have the mic. You can have whatever you want. Take it. I need a nap.
No, I have created my own.
All right, good.
As I'd like to say, I've got time, all of it and none of it in the Corona.
Do you find yourself like busier than ever?
Busier than ever, and everything takes 9 steps instead of 2.
It's weird. It's weird.
But
But we have to do something. I mean, I think all of us, and I think anyone watching this, the theater is, yes, it's a business and all the stuff I said before about Broadway being important to New York, but there's that other thing, there's that heart thing that comes from the theater, that we are unashamed of our nerdiness. That's different from being a comic book nerd or whatever these subgroups are. There's something about the theater, because it informs it. There is an element of looking in the mirror, and there's an element of changing the way we look at life. And I've always said, while I'm Jewish, I'm not religious, but I look at theater and church the exact same way, right? You get into an old moldy building with uncomfortable seating to watch a piece of storytelling that you've seen a million times before. You know the words, you know the song, you can sing along, but you learn something new each time you're there, and you end up leaving with a lot less cash than you did when you walked in. I think it's very similar to church. And I think that the reason why we are all feeling this what do we do, this loss right now. Same thing people who go to church feel, or any, religious building, because it is the thing that does fulfill us. And so we have to do something to fill that void. So
Theater teaches empathy, and I feel like we were the first group of people that were like, what do we do? How can we help? How do we make people feel better in all of that?
Right. Yeah. We are all people who are addicted to the experience of changing hearts and minds, every night at 8. And I think that that's something that cannot wait for phase whatever. We have to figure out a way to do that today. And so we're here.
Yeah. In our Brady Bunch boxes.
That's right. Absolutely.
Well, Erich, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your insane schedule to join us for our Growing Up Broadway video podcast. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So that is Growing Up. Oh. That, I'm back. That's never happened before. That is our episode of Growing Up Broadway. I will just get on my soapbox for just a hot second. People, wear your mask. Wear a mask. It's not a political statement. It's being socially responsible. Please wear a mask. I'm your co-host, S.J. Arniger.
I am your other co-host, Timothy Allen McDonald. And yes, please wear a mask. If my 89-year-old mother can wear a mask, you can too. And guess whose life you might save? My mother's. So put on your mask when you can't socially distance. Okay? Am I clear? Masks on.
We will see you next time.
Now get out there and make the world a better place by wearing your mask.
One musical at a time. May the Schwartz be with you.
Also with you.
Growing up, growing up, growing up, Broadway, growing up, Broadway.
iHeartRadio Broadway, driven by Mercedes-Benz. The best or nothing.